Okay, so we will be sending out an FAQ along with a recording to this webinar either by the end of today or tomorrow. It'll have a list of resources as well, again, as the link to the recording of the webinar today. And so welcome to Developing Your Prayer Team. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm just going to be talking a little bit here at the beginning. And so our webinar today is about the importance of prayer and having a prayer team. So as part of a missions organization, I think we all understand the importance of prayer. I sat in one of the workshops here in Dallas listening to some of our members share about the things that they do, and just amazed at some of the heroes of the faith that we have that are part of our organization that are doing impossible things for an impossible God. And prayer, of course, is a vital part of that. And so today is about the importance of having a prayer team, encouraging the people who partner with us to come alongside us and pray for our ministries, to pray for our families, for our health, for our travel plans, and then to pray for those more personal needs, things that we might not be maybe entirely comfortable sharing with everybody. And we're going to talk about maybe some safe ways that you can start sharing some of those needs. And so today's webinar, we're going to talk about what does it mean to have a complete prayer team? How do I know when I have enough people praying for me? How can I be intentional about that? How do I communicate with my prayer team once I've had them built? Are there some tools that I can use? What are some best practices to communicate with them? And then at the end of the session, we're also going to talk about advisory prayer teams, which may be a newer concept to some people. And so we want to talk about what is an advisory prayer team? Who do I invite to be a part of that? How do I communicate that with them? Why is it important to have one? So we'll go over all of those different things. And then if we have some time at the end, we have a few resources that we can share with you that you can use yourself, that you can share with your partners. And so we'll try to make those available. I think all that's also available in the FAQs if I do happen to run out of time. So we want to start off by defining what is a complete prayer team. So when we have a financial prayer team, when we're getting to 100%, it's very clear when we get to the 100% of that prayer team. We know when we're our financial teams. We know when we're done. We have a budget we're trying to reach. We need monthly partners. When we've reached that goal, we're done. So a complete prayer team is not so black and white. There's a lot more gray area there. And so I'm not, by the end of this, I'm not going to tell you, you need to have 25 people. You need to have 30 people. You need to have 200 people. I'm not going to define that for you. It's something that you have to define yourself because it's going to differ from ministry to ministry. Somebody who's in a sensitive area might think that they need more or feel that they need more prayer partners than somebody who's working in an area that's safer. And so you have to define that for yourself. I encourage you to pray about it. You know, that the Lord could even put a number of people on your heart so that you can set that goal. It is important to set a goal. And so you really do want to think that through, pray it through, ask the Lord what he might have you do. Because if we don't have a goal, then we don't have anything to work towards. And that a lot of times will prevent people from making progress because it's just this big fuzzy thing that's out there. And so, set a goal for yourself. Again, pray through with your husband or wife. If you've developed an advisory prayer team, again, what I'm going to talk about at the end, maybe talk to them and together as a team decide what is a good number of people to have on our team. We do want to give you some guidelines and some maybe best practices as you start building your team and thinking about how to get that set up. And so we talk about there being 3 levels of prayer partners. So the first level of prayer partners is sort of all of those people who've signed up for our updates, all those people who, sorry, let me back up a little bit. All those people who are going to be praying for our ministry. And so what we don't want to do is assume that everybody who signed up for our prayer updates is automatically praying for us, because that might not be true. Maybe people aren't reading your updates. Maybe people signed up 3 years ago and were praying faithfully at the beginning, but they no longer have continued to do so. And so we want to think through that a little bit. And you're going to be making a list, so I encourage you to be making a list and thinking through your partners who I can ask to be a part of this. And so since we're not assuming, we do want to make an intentional invite, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. We want to intentionally invite people to be a part of our prayer teams, kind of like we intentionally invite people to be part of our financial teams. And there's sort of like this 80-20 principle, right? That 20% of the people seem to always do 80% of the work. But a lot of times what happens is those 80% need a personal invitation to be a part of our teams, to be a part of what's going on. And so that's what we want to encourage you to do. We want to encourage you to personally invite people to be a part of your prayer team. And again, there's these three different categories. And so the first category of people to think through is, who's going to be praying for my Wycliffe ministry? You likely have people on your team who maybe don't know you personally or don't know your family very well. And so they're not as interested in those personal prayer requests. Maybe they're not interested in praying for your health or for your travel plans, but they're very interested in praying for your Wycliffe ministry specifically. They want to know what kind of things that you're working towards. They want to know that they're making an impact for Bible translation. They want to know they're making an impact for the gospel. And so we want to make sure that we have people that are praying for those specific needs, that are praying for the projects that we're working on, that are praying for our partnership development, that are praying for all those aspects of just ministry-related needs. We want to make sure that we have that prayer team. The next level is the personal needs. So we want people who are specifically going to pray for our families, who are going to pray for our health, who are going to pray for safety and travel. And as the more personal levels, you're probably going to have a closer relationship with those. So when we draw pictures of it, we talk about the people who are praying for our ministry being the outer circle, and this personal need circle being a little closer in. And then the third level being people who are going to pray for our private needs, our more sensitive personal needs. We all, especially as missionaries or being in ministry, I've heard a lot of people say things like, there's certain things that I can't share with other people. I can't share it with my partners. I don't want to share it with my family because I don't want them to be scared for me, and things like that. And what I try to encourage the people that I work with is that you need to be careful about that. You need to be careful that you don't get into a place where you feel like there are things that are happening to you, there are things that you're struggling with that you can't tell anybody, that it becomes sort of this heavy secret, because the enemy likes to use our secrets. The enemy likes to use those things that we keep in the dark to attack us and to make it really heavy for us. And how often have you finally shared one of those kinds of things and you felt that weight kind of lift off just because you've taken it out of that secret dark place? Okay, and so it's really, really important that you have this inner circle of prayer partners that you know that you can go to with anything, that you know that you can go to when you need to cry, when you need to be angry, when you need to be doubtful. You need to have people that you can go to during those times, so that the enemy can't blow it up, can't make it bigger, so that you don't feel all alone in those things. And so be intentional about setting up those three different levels of prayer. If you printed out the workbook that I gave you, you can use the worksheets that are in there. You can use a list on your computer, your phone, piece of paper, whatever you want to do. But again, make an intentional plan. Think through your partnership list. Think through your friends on Facebook. Think through all the people that you might want to include on your prayer team, and kind of divide them up into those three categories so that you can intentionally invite them to be a prayer partner at the level that you think will be most meaningful to them. Okay. One of the ways, so there are some tools out there that you can use to invite people to sign up. And so some people might just want to do a phone call or a text message or a Facebook message or a plain text email, and those are okay. I've had several other people who wanted to use kind of a sign-up form to send out to people. They maybe had a higher volume of people that they wanted to send it out to. So I wanted to show you some examples of sign-up forms that you can use. I'm not going to go into great detail about any of them. And so if you hear one of them and you'd like some more help or more advice, let me know. Maybe we can set up a workshop or some one-on-one time to kind of work through the details of that. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this one is just on Google Forms, and so it's a real simple setup. I just typed in, the title, prayer team sign up, you can call it, whatever you want to call it. Make sure that you have your email address in here. I found this to be kind of a hidden feature that I'll show you how to get to in a minute, but I just included some information like the days of the week. And so the people that I've worked with who have decided they want to be really intentional about setting up their prayer team is I wanted to make sure that they had some people praying in all three of those categories, either every day of the week, every day of the month, or every week of the month. Okay, so they essentially what they're thinking through is, let me set up a calendar so that I know I have adequate prayer coverage. And so that looks like different things to different people, but one of the ways that you can do that is just with a simple sign up like this. And so this is inviting people to pray with you every day, a certain day of the week. So every Monday, I'm going to pray for you in your Wycliffe ministry. Every Friday, I'm going to pray with you. You can set it up so they can sign up for more than one day. You have people who are really committed. This is only going to let them sign up for one day. Let me go into sort of the setup. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but you can change the color. You can put a little note here letting people know what you're looking for from them. To add the email address in Google Forms, you actually need to go up to this little cogs wheel and use this, collect email addresses. And then I had to remove this restrict to Wycliffe Bible translators. Otherwise, it acted weird for me. But I removed that, and when I removed that, it opened up this field on my form. That took the first time I did this, it took me a long time to figure out why I couldn't add people's email addresses, because it's not, you expect it to be one of these options and it wasn't. But anyway, so those are some of the things that you can do. You'll see I kind of referred to this. You can add questions, add text, pictures. There's a lot that you can do with the form, but the idea is just once you're done is you can send it to people. And so you can send it via email, you can grab a web link. And so you could put this onto Facebook. You could put this into, if you have a Facebook group or a blog or a website or something like that. So there's different ways that you can share the specific sign-up form. Another sign-up form that you can use is through MailChimp. And so if you have a MailChimp account and you go to your lists in MailChimp, you'll use this drop-down menu that's next to the name of your list. Okay. And then go to sign up forms. And then so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because I do cover it in the MailChimp webinars. So if you need specific help, I encourage you to go watch that recording. But you select Form Builder. And you'll see I've already done a lot of my setup for this. Okay. And so I'm collecting email address, first name, last name. You'll see that there's a bunch of different options on the right side. But again, what you're using this for is you'll see that there's this link up here. And so you can email it to people so that they can sign up for your prayer team or your ministry updates. This is ministry updates, but we're talking about prayer teams. So to sign up for your prayer team, your prayer updates, again, you can put this into Facebook. And so if you have a Facebook page, you can actually link to this so that people are able to click on a tab and use your form to sign up for your prayer team. These are templates that I'll talk about in a minute. I did want to show, this is another one that one of the people I worked with created herself. It's just an Excel sheet, and she gave some instructions about what's going on and what she expects, how she intends to interact. And then it's just a sign-up form for people to do individual or family, add their email address. She liked this because she wanted people on her prayer team to be able to see other people who are on her prayer team. And so I believe she actually set this up in Google Docs and Google Sheets. And so every person who signed up could see where other people signed up. So it was easy for her partners to see the holes in the chart so that they could sign up for a place that maybe others hadn't. So you can see her goal was to have 3 individuals or families per day of the month. So every day she wants to have at least 3 people praying and interceding for her. Okay? And so she had great response to this, and lots of people did end up signing up. And so those are some of the different sign-up forms that you could have available if you decide that's something that you want to do. Making sure I got all my information here. One thing to kind of keep in mind too is we want some balance. So while we don't want to have too few prayer partners, but we want to also be careful about having too many. And that might sound a little strange because it's not a thing that you can have too many people praying for you, but we are going to tell you, or going to encourage you to be communicating with your prayer team. They pray for us, and we want to pray for them as well. And if you end up with a huge amount of prayer prayer people on your team, you might be less likely to interact with them. You might be less likely to pray for them. If you have 500 people on your prayer team, how often are you actually going to get to spend time praying for them? And so kind of think through that as well. I'm going to talk about some different tools a little bit later in this session that you can use to help you pray for your team. Talk a little bit about the importance of that. Just keep that kind of in the back of your mind. If you're just adding people who maybe don't know you well to your prayer team, you might be less likely to develop that relationship with them. And so we want this prayer team to be something that's dynamic, a dynamic part of your ministry, something that you're interacting with your prayer partners, they're interacting back with you. And so while I can't give you a solid number that's going to work for you, maybe it's 3 people a day, maybe it's 20 people a week, however you decide to do that. Again, we're trying to use some best practices. So we don't want to go too far in one way or the other. We're looking for balance on our prayer team. So the next thing is, once we have our prayer team set up, we've had people sign up, feel like we have enough people on our team, or maybe, we only have 50% of our team and we're working towards 100%. But while we're waiting on that, we still need to start communicating. So we need to be communicating with our partnership team on a regular basis. This looks like different things for different people. I'm not going to prescribe. You need to email. You need to send a prayer update once a month. You need to send it once a week. You need to do what works for you. So that's something that you need to pray about and think through. Ask the Lord what He would have you do as you start setting up your communications. For people the person who set up, asked 3 people to pray every day of the month, she sends an email once a week to the people who have signed up for that week and just lets them know, these are the prayer requests that I had this week. Some people send it out once a month. I kind of encourage you not to do it too much longer than that, because it stops being a relational thing if you start stretching it out too far. To make it easier though, and so we don't want your prayer updates to take you an hour every time you sit down to do one, or 2 hours every time you sit down to do one, because it's not sustainable. It's not something you're going to keep up with. So ideally, you'd set up a template that you can use over and over again, so that when you sit down to write your prayer updates, it maybe takes you 10 or 20 minutes to write out your prayer requests and get it sent out. Okay, so there's different ways that you can set up templates. I can show you a couple of those as well. Let me move back over here. And so this is one of the templates that I've used in the past. You'll see I have a static banner, but the only things that I'm changing then are these 3 praise, and then 2 prayer requests. Of course, we want to start out our praise and prayer updates with praise requests, giving praise to the Lord before we go into the things that we want to be updating. Especially, again, I keep emphasizing, we want this to be a dynamic relationship with our partners. If it's going to be dynamic, they need to know how their prayers are being answered. They want to know that they're having an impact. We want to communicate that with them. So when you ask people to pray for you, when the Lord answers, we want to share those answers to prayer with our partners, and we want to give praise to God for that. But what I want you to see, though, is that this isn't going to take me a lot of time to update this and get it sent out. And so with this one, I've just put days of the month, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then obviously these aren't real people, okay? But it's just a quick reminder for those people what day you've signed up for. And so I'm not expecting Snow White to remember that she signed up for the 4th of every month. And so I just give it this as a short reminder that they've done so. And so if I create one of these for each week of the year, so it's a little bit of setup, right? Kind of like the same with MailChimp. You have to set up your template. But once your template is set up, then you're just going to be able to use it quickly or faster than you would if you had to start from scratch. Okay. And so ideally, the only thing that I would have to update each time that I go to fill this out each month is these top 3 items. So I'm just giving praise to the Lord, giving my prayer requests, and then it's ready to send. Okay, same thing. This is another example inside of MailChimp. Okay, so it just has a top and bottom banner. I just update the praises, update the prayer requests, and it's ready to send. This one, the formatting got messed up, but I added a few links for 30 days of the Wycliffe prayer calendar, pray for people groups, and praying with scripture. So these are just some different resources that I'll show you at the end of the webinar. I would need to reformat this before I use it again. But again, the idea I want you to get is it's simple. Okay, this wouldn't take me very long to sit down, fill out this template, and send it out. And so it's a sustainable form of communicating with my partners because it's easy, straightforward. Another way that you can do that is with, I also want you to be hearing that you need to have a schedule. And so we don't want to haphazardly send out our prayer requests. We want to build an expectation in our partners. So I send out a prayer update to my prayer partners every 2 weeks. And they've gotten so used to that when I skip a week, I get responses from my partners asking, what happened? Are you okay? Why haven't we heard from you? And you want to kind of build that culture with your partners. That's a relationship, right? They're expecting me to interact that way. And so even if it's once a month or if it's once a week, try to make it on the same day of the month or the same day of the week so that people have that expectation that, my missionary is going to be sending me my prayer update on this day and I should be looking for it. Okay, so we want to build, it's sort of like building a habit for your partners. Okay, so be thinking through that. The same thing with Facebook. So there's lots of people who like to use Facebook groups. There are lots of people who like to use Facebook groups for their prayer teams. And so a couple of things to think through. This is one of the people that I coached. You'll see she has a map of Papua New Guinea, which is where she's at. And then she'll include her newsletters. She includes prayer updates. And this has been a way for her and her prayer team to communicate with one another. A couple of things when you're using this. One is you want to set your group to private or secret group so that people can't randomly add themselves to your prayer group or search for it and find it. It'd be kind of awkward if strangers started adding themselves to your prayer group. And so just kind of be aware of that when you're doing your settings. And then also, even though we're on Facebook, we still want to have some sort of schedule going on. Okay, so whether it's for people who are on Facebook all the time, maybe do it once every few days, maybe do it once a week. But we don't want to start getting too far out again. If you're doing it once a month, don't do it on the 15th one month and the 30th the next month. Okay, have a schedule. Be doing it on a regular basis. Again, just because you publish it on Facebook doesn't mean all of your partners see it, even if they have Facebook, right? Because it comes on their timeline. So if you build in an expectation that it's going to show up around this time, then people will hopefully start to build that memory that I need to look for that.
Jen, we've got a question here before we go too much further. They want to know, do you use multiple prayer team templates, a bit different for each prayer group, like ministry, personal, etc.?
Sure. So you can. I've used different ones throughout. So there's a couple of other ones too that I actually forgot to show. And I'll show in a minute if it doesn't answer the question. I've typically used one that looks pretty much the same for each of my prayer teams, just because that's what was easiest for me. I didn't want to take the time to set up different looking templates. And I don't know, and so it's really a personal preference, I guess is what I'm coming down to. If you want to have a different look and feel for each one, you're free to do that. I don't know that there's necessarily a benefit to doing that unless you have a conversation going on with your partners that they know that they're a part of more than one prayer group. So if you have somebody who's part of your closest intimate prayer group and part of your ministry prayer group, and those are separate communications for you, then you might want to give them different looks and feels so that are different templates so that partner knows when I get this look, this is the kind of prayer request I'm going to get. We do want to build up those sorts of expectations for our partners. Now, just because you have the 3 different prayer groups doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be separate updates. So you might have your ministry updates and your personal updates in the same email, but we want to intentionally develop those as different prayer groups so that we know that those needs are covered, right? If we just lump our ministry and prayer, our ministry and personal needs into the same group when we're developing our team, then we might get uneven coverage, right? We might get 2 people who are praying just for our ministry and 50 people who are praying just for our personal needs. Well, now our ministry doesn't have adequate prayer coverage. So that's why I encourage the 3 separate groups. But when you actually go to communicate, it's okay to have, you might go ahead and put those in that same email, knowing that some partners are going to choose some over the other. So again, we're looking for something that's sustainable for you and that communicates to your partnership team. And so it's going to look a little bit different for each person. Some people might have different templates. Some people might have the same. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
So can I clarify too, when you're talking about different groups, you're really talking about what people are going to take toward in your prayer request rather than having separate groups that are getting separate emails.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it might be the same list or the same email that you're sending out that hits both ministry and personal needs. Now, probably you're going to send out a separate communication for those more personal needs, right? Because maybe everybody who's praying for our ministry doesn't need to know. I'm not going to have a good example off the top of my head. Maybe I lost somebody very close to me, and I really only want to share that with my personal partners. Or maybe I'm working on a project and I'm starting to have doubts that this is really going to work. Maybe I don't want to share that with my whole team. Maybe I don't want people who don't know me well to be hearing me talk about my doubts and fears about the project. And so I only want to communicate those needs with the people who are safe for me. And again, we don't want to have nobody who can hear about those things, but we do want to have a couple of people that we can share. So that might be a separate more private communication. And maybe those don't get a template. Maybe those are just a text email or a text message. I have a group of my own prayer team who requested to receive text messages for prayer requests. They wanted to do that because they wanted to pray for my most immediate needs when I needed it in the moment. So I have a group of people that always get text messages about these webinars. I have about, I think, maybe 8 or 9 people who are in that group who they want a text message every time I'm going to have a webinar or a table talk because they want to be praying for these sessions. And I ask for prayer anytime that I'm doing something Wycliffe ministry based. I send them a text message so that they're praying that day, almost that hour, that are covering that need. And that's just another way that you can communicate. There's lots of options out there to communicate. But again, those 3 different levels are just so that you have adequate prayer coverage in each area. Switching back to, I think I finished with the Facebook group. Let me know if you have any questions about the Facebook group. I know that I'm not really giving any information about how to get that started or set up. So if you do need help for that, feel free to reach out. I'm not going to go into that today. I want to backtrack just a little bit because I did forget 2 other templates that I've used. And these were created just in Publisher. You can also do PowerPoint. You can do Word. This is what I did when I was first doing my initial PD assignment. This is what my prayer calendar looked like. And so I did 3 prayer requests per week. And then 1 was personal, 1 was ministry related, and then 1 was just wider Wycliffe ministry related. And so I would look for places that were in the country that I thought I was called to, or I would get onto Wycliffe's website and find prayer requests that they had for a Bibleist prayer group and include that. And so that way I was hitting different categories of people. So if people wanted to pray specifically for me, they had information to do that. They wanted to pray for ministry needs, they had the information to do that. So this was just, I had a different template for each month. So then I was just changing the date, the year, and the prayer requests themselves each time I sent it out. So that's what it looked like for April. Tuesday was 2013, so it's been a while since I've used this template. This is another template that I've used. I've had several partners who've liked this format. I haven't used it in a while. But this is, again, the reminding the person when they're going to pray. This is just scripture verses to share with them on the day that they're praying. But this is the part that I changed. And so under here where it says prayer requests, I would just give a praise and a couple of prayer requests. And so that's just, again, your template can look like anything you want. You can be as creative as you want with these. But you just want it to be something that you're going to use, something that's going to make sending out a prayer update easy for you so that you keep up with it. Right? I think we all know that if it's too difficult, we're going to make excuses or we're going to put it off, and then months are going to go by and we haven't set anything out. That's what we want to prevent. And so make that a part of your plan. Make it a part of your plan to have a template that's simple, easy to use. You can update 10, 15 minutes, and it's ready to go. So you can get it out. Also, MailChimp has a scheduling feature. And so if you decide to send out an email to weekly, so you have different people praying for you each week, is you can actually schedule the emails. So at the beginning of the month, if you already know what prayer requests you want to share, you can set up your template, get those 4 or 5 emails written, schedule them. Then you don't even have to think about it again until the next month. But it still looks like they're going out each week. Okay? So there's lots of different things that you can do. It's just finding the method that's going to work best for you. Another thing with Facebook, so kind of turning back to Facebook a little bit, is this is a Facebook group. You can also do a Facebook page. This is not a good example, okay, but I just grabbed this last second. There's something I was doing with the recruitment department. With the page, it takes a little bit more time to set up, and so I don't know that I would create a page just for my prayer team. Because it has its own timeline, it has a home, post, videos, photos. But if you already have one of these set up, you can add a tab that says email sign up, and this links to one of my Google Forms. Okay, but then in Facebook, you can actually embed your sign up form for your prayer team as one of the tabs. So that is another option. I have less experience in working with Facebook pages, but if you need help, we can set up a one-on-one and kind of figure it out together. So those are some of the options that you have for setting up templates for communicating. Another thing to think through is, yeah.
Sorry, we have a couple questions here, and a couple comments too. One is that Facebook groups also have the ability to schedule posts. Mm-hmm. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The other thing is Facebook pages are public. They are not, you can't set the privacy settings. So that's something to be aware of too. Another question here is, I'm hearing 2 levels, ministry and personal, but we're saying 3 levels. What's the third?
Right. So the third level is the more private requests. So I talked about sort of towards the beginning that as people in ministry, often we think that there are things that happen to us. Like if we have doubts or we have fears or something more private has happened to us, that there's a tendency in the ministry community to think, I can't share those prayer needs with anybody. I don't want my wider team to know about that because maybe they won't believe in me anymore. They won't partner with me anymore. I don't want to complain. I don't want to complain to my prayer team. I don't want to complain to my partnership team. And so we start taking those more private needs and we keep them to ourselves, and they get too big. Right? The enemy uses those things to taunt us or to bring us into our depression or to isolate us from the people around us. And so that third level is to protect against that. And maybe that's not going to be 50 people, right? That might be 2 people. That might be 4 or 5 people. But it's a group of people that care about you as an individual. They're not going to be off-put by, I'm having doubts about my calling today. Or, you know what, I'm overseas and I'm having culture shock and I hate the people around me and I never want to be here again. I want to go home. You need to be able to share that with some of your prayer partners. Again, you're not going to share that kind of prayer need when you're in the middle of culture shock and you hate the country that you're in and you don't want to be there anymore and you want to go home. You don't want to share that with everybody who partners with you. You don't want to share that with your wider prayer ministry team probably either. But you need to have at least 2 to 5 people that you can send an email to, that you can send a text message to, that you can call on the phone, and that you can share those honest, hard things with, so that you know that you're not by yourself, so that you're getting messages of encouragement back, that you're getting an encouraging phone call, that people are praying for those hard things, and that the enemy's not using those things to isolate you and make you feel like you're all alone. Okay, so that's that third level. Is that real small, tight-knit group that's going to look out for those things that we can't share with our full partnership team.
Okay. We've got a couple more. Sorry. People have been really busy typing here. And then another person was also talking about levels as in wider and global. Like I think you would use an example of a country you cared about or a Bibleist people group. But that would be more ministry related in your ministry section, right?
Yeah, and so those are just more ideas. So people who are in more administrative kinds of positions sometimes will have harder times thinking of things to share with our prayer partners who want to know that they're having an impact on Bible translation. And so that's when I would go to wycliffe.org, or I would go to one of the Wycliffe blogs or Facebook and look for prayer needs that they have. Maybe there was a scripture celebration and I could share that with my partners and we can all praise God for that together. maybe there's a translation project that's getting ready to come to close. It's almost done. And Wycliffe as an organization is praying for that need. And so that might be a need that I share with my prayer group. That's what I was kind of referring to. But yes, that goes into your those who pray for your ministry needs.
Okay. And then we had one more that was a comment, and I think it was also in the chat so other people can see it as well. It seems to me that if you actually word the prayer, it would make it even easier for people to implement. For example, "Dear Lord, please help Jen as she gives a webinar. Give her sharp mind and smooth technical process. In Jesus' name, amen."
Yeah, I do that with my text message group. So when I send out my message to those 9 people who've prayed for our webinars, I give very specific instructions. So please pray for the webinar. Please pray that the technology will work. Please pray that I'll teach clearly. If I'm feeling nervous about something I'm about to teach, please pray that I'll have peace as I go into it. So yeah, I give them very specific ideas. I think your comment was to specifically word the prayer. And that's going to be a personal preference. So if you feel like part of your prayer team would really like you to have a written prayer that they can pray, maybe you include that as part of your update. It's a great idea. So any other questions?
All right, I think we're caught up for now.
Okay. I like the questions. Keep asking, please. The other thing that I want to bring out about communicating with your prayer team is communicating with churches. And so if you have churches that are on your prayer team, make sure that you're intentional about how they want to be connected with. So if you're connecting with a missions board, if you're connecting directly with a pastor, just make sure that you don't leave out that part of it. And then the last part about communicating with your prayer team is don't forget to communicate how much you value your partners. So in partnership development specifically, we talk about how our financial partners, and hopefully our prayer partners as well, it's not a one-way relationship, right? You're not just supporting me. We're partnering together to do Bible transition, to do this assignment, to do this calling together. And so one of the ways that it becomes a partnership is when you turn around and one, communicate how much your partners mean to you. Maybe it's a group email, maybe it's a phone call to specific people, maybe it's a text message, maybe personalize that a little bit. But it's also praying for your partners. So at the beginning, we were talking about what's a complete prayer team. I encourage you not to get too big with your prayer team so that you're able to communicate back to them. And so maybe the Lord lays a specific partner on your heart and you pray for them and you want to lift that up. But don't just, instead of just praying for them and your partner never knowing about it, is you can send them a quick text message and say, thank you for praying for me. This is how the Lord's been directing me to pray for you. Sometimes I've sent that email or that text message and gotten a huge message back from my partner telling me all the things that were going on in their lives. And they just needed somebody to listen to them. I think that's a unique privilege that we have as missionaries, is that we have people who are called specifically to pray for us and to be a part of our lives in that way. A lot of people who are not in ministry don't have that. They don't have people who listen to them. They don't have people to pray for them. And so that's a ministry that you can offer back to them, is that you can listen to what their stories, you can listen to their needs and let them know that you're standing in the gap for them. And so we do want it to be that two-way relationship. There is a specific tool that can help you pray for your partners and make that a regular part of your prayer life. I was going to show it to you, but my iPad would not connect to Zoom today. I don't know why that's happening. But the app is called, I guess you don't have to look at Facebook anymore. The app is called PrayerMate. And so unfortunately, it's not for your desktop computer. I've looked and looked and looked trying to find something like this for the desktop. And so far, I've not been able to find one. So if you have resources that you use, please let me know so that I can share them with everybody else. But PrayerMate is something that you can put on your mobile device. So it can be on your tablets, on your phone. And what's really nice about it is, so you actually upload your own prayer list. So, maybe I have all my prayer partners on there. And you can tell the app, I want to pray for 4 people a day. Okay? Because again, if our list is 100 people, you're not going to pray for 100 people in one day. Okay? Or at least most of us wouldn't. And so we want it to be in chunks of people that it's going to be doable for us. That when we spend time praying, that we have time to meaningfully pray for our partners. It's not just checking something off a list. And so like on mine, I have it set up for 4. So I can pray for 4 of my partners a day during my normal prayer time. And instead of having to keep track of a piece of paper or try to remember who I prayed for last time and who I haven't prayed for yet, it actually tells you. And so you put your list of contacts into PrayerMate. You tell the app, I want to pray for 4 people a day, and it generates that list for you each day, and then you swipe it. So after you finish praying, you just swipe to the left, and the app knows that you finished praying for that person. You can add a note into it. So if you prayed a specific scripture verse and you want to remember what that was, you can put that into the app, and it'll store that information for you. It actually helps you construct prayer time. And so if you want to pray the promises of God for your partner, or you want to pray certain scripture verse for your partner, there's actually a part of the app that helps you do that. They make recommendations on what verses to use and things like that. And so it's a really cool app. You can carry it with you. And so it's just a good reminder. You can set up reminders in the app itself, so it'll send you an alarm to remind you to pray for your partners. And so it's just a kind of handy tool and a good reminder that we need to be doing that. And so far we've talked about how do we know when we have a complete prayer team, which unfortunately was kind of a gray area, right? And then how to communicate with our prayer team. And so the last thing I want to talk about is our advisory prayer team. So the advisory prayer team a lot of times will fall into that smaller circle. So again, these are the people that we can share more private needs with, that we don't have to hold back with, that we can tell our more private needs to. And so the advisory part of it is optional. All of this is optional, obviously, right? This is your Wycliffe ministry, and you have to decide between you and the Lord how you're going to structure your prayer team. But the advisory part of the prayer team can be really helpful. I've seen a lot of the people that I've coached have really appreciated this portion of their team. And so when you're making up this advisory team, is using them for advisory purposes. And so when you don't know the next decision to make, when you're praying about what to do next, is going to this team and asking them to pray with you and listening to them. So the Lord speaks, gives wisdom and speaks to those he puts into our lives. And so doing it together, doing it as a team, again, staying out of isolation, inviting people to be a part of the process with you. And a couple of the things it does on a real practical level is it gives those partners a sense of ownership in your Wycliffe ministry. It gets them more excited. They see how they're an intimate part of what God's doing in your Wycliffe ministry. And a lot of times they end up advocating for you. They get so excited that they can't help tell other people about it. They want to invite other people to be part of it. So that's one of the benefits of the team, is that you're giving people, most, not now, but originally most of the people who were on my advisory prayer team were not financial partners, but they really still wanted to be, they felt called to be a part of it, but they didn't know what that meant. And so when I offered them this opportunity, they were excited because now they knew how they could be a part of what God was doing. And I've seen that. So the first time I heard about the advisory prayer team was when I was going through Equip Online, and that we highly recommend things in Wycliffe. And so it was highly recommended that you do an advisory prayer team. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of, because the way they talk about it is they say, invite 4 or 5 people. I would encourage actually doing 6 to 8 people. The reason is one, we don't want this group to get too big, because again, if it gets too big, it loses that intimacy feel. But if it's too small, so if you invite 3 people and only 1 show up, or 2 people aren't able to make it, you only have 1 person show up, and now it's not really a prayer meeting anymore. And so 6 to 8 people, so that a couple of people might not be there every time, and that's okay. But again, you want it to be people that you trust, that you feel comfortable with. And this was uncomfortable for me because I'm now asking people to give up an hour or 2 of their evenings once a month to come and pray for me in my Wycliffe ministry. And that was really an uncomfortable place for me. And I even tried to get them to pray for each other, and gratefully they did do that. And so again, I was surprised because people were excited. They felt honored that I asked them to be a part of it. And it became a really powerful part, especially of my PD process. I still meet with them through video chat because we're no longer in the same state. But when I got really discouraged in my PD, we would get together as a group and we would pray together, and hearing them pray for my Wycliffe ministry and for Bible transition and what the Lord had called me to do, was really, really powerful. I always left feeling excited again, ready to go, energized. Sometimes the Lord would speak to one of them and they would have, ideas on things that I could do or perspective about what I was struggling with that I hadn't had before. And so it just became this really tight-knit group that was part of our Wycliffe ministry. Again, today, so I'm not in the same location with them anymore. And so we can't all meet as a group in person. And so we meet online. We use Zoom or we use Skype, and people video in from wherever they happen to be, and we still do it as a team. I get pushback on this as far as meeting as a team and taking the time to do it in person because it's hard to schedule, it's hard to get on the calendar, and those things are true. And I encourage you to do it anyway. So again, it's a powerful, powerful thing to have people come together and pray and to hear them pray, and to hear each other pray, and to do it as a group. And so I encourage you to do that. If you won't do that, still have an advisory prayer team. Okay, still have people that maybe send them an email once a week or an email once a month. But still have that group of people that you can go to with those more personal needs. It's an important thing to have. So if you're unwilling to meet in person, I still think it's worth the discomfort of doing. And some people can't when they're overseas. Okay, but when you're here in the States or if you're in a place with good internet, I really think there's a lot of value and that you'll see that value if you'll make the effort to meet in person or meet in video. But again, if you don't have that ability, still stay connected. And maybe it's not a group email that you send out. Maybe it is. Maybe you send out a group email once a week to the advisory prayer team. Maybe you send out text messages privately to those people. But have that group of people.
Okay, we have a couple questions on this topic, and then we have one off topic when we're ready to wrap up the advisory prayer team. Do the people in your APT know each other already, or did you build a team out of people who didn't know each other? And
let me answer that first.
Okay.
I built a team out of people who didn't know each other. I think maybe one or two people had some previous knowledge of the other person, but they did not have their own relationship. And so even the people that I have on my team now, when I first invited them to my team, they didn't know each other at all. Okay, but now they do. Now they actually do have personal relationships because of being on the advisory prayer team together. So no, they don't have to know each other. It's going to take a little bit of warm up, of course, if they don't know each other. So obviously you're not going to dive in and everybody be best friends that first day. Okay, and so this works a little bit better in person. But again, the focus is on praying for you. And so they're all people who love you and care about you and care about what you're doing. And so there's a bond that forms in that. It becomes personal over time, especially if you have the same prayer team that stays with you for years. I've had mine for 6 years now, and they're the same people that I started out with. They've got, like I said, they've gotten to know each other, and a couple of them even spend time together outside of our team. And so, yeah.
Yep, I'll agree with that. I've had mine for 19 years, and it's almost all the same people as well, and they didn't know each other at the start either. And then one more question. Is the APT for a specific time or season, or is it something you keep doing forever? I think I just gave my answer right there.
Yeah, I encourage you to do it forever. Maybe there are seasons when you're able to meet in person and seasons when you're not, and that's okay. But I encourage you to keep going with it. Like I said, I've had mine since I've begun, and I look forward to those times every month. It's a great time to just talk about all the things that are going on in your ministry, all the things that are going on, and just having that support system is really, really meaningful. We initially encourage it in that PD process, right? So that PD is something that we don't like to talk about, and it seems like this private thing that we shouldn't talk about with our partners. And maybe there's some truth to that, but we need to have partners that we can talk about it with. And so I think that's how a lot of the advisory prayer teams get started, is when there's a PD need. But it doesn't need to just be PD. Again, it can be all the things that we've talked about up to this point. So that's a really long answer to say, no, it's not for a specific time.
Right. Yeah, mine has really become a core to my ministry. They've become a really good foundation, and I don't know that I would be able to do this job without them, to be quite honest. Okay, we have one more question. It's off topic at this stage,
sure,
but it might be appropriate anyway. Someone has asked, most of these tips are highly tech dependent. Do you have suggestions for keeping in touch in lower tech field scenarios?
Well, I mean, I think if we don't have our technology, we probably go back to the old school snail mail way, right? We still want to make sure those prayer requests are getting out. And so, I mean, even if that looks like handwriting a letter, then it looks like handwriting a letter. If you have access to a printer, you can obviously print off copies. The way we do our traditional newsletters that go through the Postal Service, I think you can do that with your prayer, and that's okay too. I had a group of women who this isn't one of my core prayer teams, but they had it was a women's ministry in my home church who had sort of decided to adopt me as their missionary. And one of the things that they did was each one of them handwrote a prayer to me about how they were praying for me, what it meant for them to be a part of ministry. And that was really cool, right? So now I have a stack of handwritten letters from prayer partners that are just about encouragement, praying for me. And that was really meaningful. And so if you can develop that with your prayer team, I think it's, sometimes it's even more meaningful to have a piece of paper than it is to have an email. Now, of course, you're going to have to be more intentional about that because obviously your letters are going to take a lot longer to get to people than an email would. And so maybe it's more feasible for you to do it once a month. It's probably not going to work for you to do it weekly. But if you can do it once a month or even once every other month, but regularly still getting those prayer requests out or maybe you have somebody in the States that you can send it to and they create an email for you and send it out, right? There's still lots of different options that you can use. There are services out there that will send out mailings for you, but I guess you still have to have technology for that. So a lot of it's going to end up being handwritten, maybe. I don't know. Different creative opportunities, but still, whatever you need to do to stay in contact with your prayer partners, find a way to do that. That's something that you're going to talk to your advisory prayer team about. What do they think are some creative ways that they could maybe as a team help you guys stay connected as a prayer team. One thing I didn't mention, this is kind of another tech thing. For those of you who do have technology, whether it's, WhatsApp or text messaging or whatnot, is myself and my close prayer team have a code word. It's penguin. Okay. So it's a nonsensical word. But I can send that to my prayer partners when I'm in the middle of something really heavy, really intense, an emergency. I don't have time to explain to you what's going on right now, but I need people praying now. So I can just send them that word. They know they need to start praying. And then when things calm down, then I'm able to send them the email or make a phone call and let them know what happened. So hopefully that answers the question.
We have another question, and sorry if you already said this, but how often do you meet with your advisory prayer team?
I try to meet with them once a month. I don't like to go too much further out than a month, every other month. We've done every other month when people have been really, really busy, because sometimes life just gets busy. Kids are finishing school, they've gone on summer vacation, or there's a holiday, holiday season or something like that. So I don't let this become a guilt thing either, right? If you have to skip a month or 2 months, don't feel guilty about it, but also make sure you get back in the pattern of doing it. So I've had that happen too, is, we missed a month or two, and then, I let the enemy kind of come in at me. Well, we've not done it for 2 months. They don't want to do it anymore. I just need to stop worrying about that, or I'm too busy. I need to let that go. And then eventually one of them will come to me like, aren't we still doing this? What's going on? And so don't let that, just kind of be aware of those patterns. But again, it all goes back to sustainability. You want to do something that's going to be sustainable for you. It's sustainable for me to meet with my partnership team once a month. I would give it priority. It's very valuable to me. I would love to do it more than that, but that's what people's times permit. I wouldn't go more than 2 or 3 months without talking to your advisory team in person if you can. If that's an option that's available to you. I think you'll be surprised that people are willing to make that time available.
I might add too there, if you're in a time of transition or where things are where you really need them, you might want to meet every 2 weeks, depending on the situation as well.
Yeah.
We have another comment here. Was it hard to get people willing to give up an hour a month to do so? My experience is that people don't want to do it. And after being in ministry for a while, I've lost touch with people, so there may be fewer people who care about me.
Well, so I didn't have a hard time. I didn't have a hard time getting people to join. I think it's the way that I invited them, though. So for this specific prayer team, I didn't send an email. I sat down face to face with people and explained to them, this is what I'm doing. This is why this specific team is important. This is why it's important to me that you specifically are on this team. And I think that's essential, right? We're inviting people who do personally care about us in our ministry. And when we sit down, and we do that with our financial partners too, right? We encourage you to sit down face to face with people and make a personal invitation. When you get an email about something like this, it's easy to read that and think, he or she's not really talking to me. It's not a big deal if I don't respond. But it's a personal invitation. You sit down with somebody and explain to them, my relationship with you is important. I value your input. I value your prayer. I value your time. Here's all the reasons why. This is what your relationship means to me. It would be so valuable and it would be so meaningful to me if you were a part of this team. So it's that personal invitation, I think, that gets people to buy in, if we want to use that phrase. But yeah, if your invitations are not personal, then I think you'll have a hard time with this. But if it's on that really deep relational level, I think you'll see a different kind of response.
Yep, I would agree with that as well. I did the same thing. And I had some people that I invited I didn't know very well, but that I saw would be really advantageous, and just shared that with them. It's like, I see this in you, and I think that my ministry would really benefit. And they said yes, which surprised me.
Yeah, my initial response was surprised too when people joined and actually were excited. I didn't think that was going to be a thing. So I recognize that there is tension there. There is anxiety. There's discomfort. But I think if you prioritize it, if you put the time and effort into it, I think it'll become a really valuable tool. Now it has decreased for me, where I think I had 10 people when I started. I only have 3 now, which I earlier recommended not to do that, right? Because if one person or 2 people miss, then you only have 1 person praying with you. But that's become an okay thing for the group that I have. The intimacy that's been built in that group, it's been okay for us to be smaller, and that's become really meaningful for us. But I did not start that way. I started with the bigger group, and it's going to become a reflection of you and your team. It's going to become something intimate and personal and something that fits you. But you have to start in that awkward place and let it be uncomfortable for a little while you get used to it. I do want to go ahead and start wrapping up. We just have 1 minute left. I did not get an opportunity to share the resources that are available as far as prayer resources from Wycliffe. You'll see that if you go to wycliffe.org/prayer, you'll find those. There's several things that are there that you can do for yourself or you can share with your partners. And then shop.wycliffe. If you go to shop.wycliffe.org and type prayer into the search, you'll come up with a bunch of different brochures and information about prayer there as well.
Do they need to log in with their account at the shop.wycliffe.org site?
To actually order, you do. To see them, you don't. I was surprised I wasn't logged in and everything still came up as free. So I was surprised that happened. But yeah, do go ahead and sign in if you're going to be ordering things from shop.wycliffe, and sign in with your organizational email.
Yeah, and then you may find some resources too if you've logged in that you wouldn't see if you weren't logged in as well.
Right. So that's all we have for you today. If you have questions, feel free to email us at pd_webinars_USA@wycliffe.org. I believe that'll probably be stuck in the chat here in a second. Doug has already shared the survey link with you, so if you'll take a few minutes to fill that out, we'll include it again in your email if you don't have time to do it now. And let me just close our time together and pray for you guys. All right. So Lord, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the technology that you've given us to be able to connect across the miles. And Lord, we ask that you'd be with each person who's attended today as they pray and spend time with you, seeking wisdom about how they can develop their own prayer teams and to do that well. I pray that you would help each person to be intentional about the team that they put together so that their ministries, their lives are covered in prayer, that as they go into places of spiritual warfare, that they know that they have the covering and the protection they need to do their assignment and what you've called them to well. Lord, we thank you that you have called people to stand with us, that we are not alone in the ministries that you've called us to. And I pray against the enemy's lies that say that we are alone. Lord, I ask that you would create community for each of the missionaries that are here today, that they would feel supported and connected by the people that you've called to be around them. I pray that you would keep each person safe as they go into the rest of their week. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. Again, you'll get the FAQ with this recording either later today or tomorrow, depending on how the rest of today unfolds.
Do you want